Hi everyone, welcome to 2011 Studies. This is the fourth one of Purim, the study of Purim. I thought I was going to do three, then I studied a little bit more this morning, and I decided to put one more together. And this one includes some of the numbers. So what we're going to do, and the date of Purim, the original date of Purim in 473 BC. I'm going to read first, before I get into the date aspect of it, some more information on Esther. In 473 BC, Esther, by prayer and fasting, saved the Jewish people of the kingdom from massacre. This act made her famous, and after Esther became the queen, Haman, the king's prime minister, obtained a royal decree that authorized the slaughter of all Jewish people living within the borders of the Persian Empire. In addition, Haman's decree called for the confiscation of all their properties. Now, first though, he needed to secure 10,000 talents of silver from the king to pay those in the kingdom to accomplish what is basically slaughter and thievery. And you know, of the Jewish people and in the kingdom. And remember that phrase that we covered, but they laid not their hands on the spoil when the Jewish people had, it was turned to their advantage. I think there's a good reason for that, because the Haman's plot here was basically to slaughter them and take their spoil and then give it to the king, and that's how he pretty much used this against them, and the king gave his seal of approval on that. Esther 3:8, and Haman said unto King Ahasuerus, there is a certain people scattered abroad and dispersed among the people in all the provinces of thy kingdom, and their laws are diverse from all people. That word diverse is almost doubled. I think it means maybe there's more laws than what the king has. But anyway, neither keep they the king's laws, therefore it is not for the king's profit to suffer them or allow them. If it please the king, or this is Haman speaking to the king, let it be written that they may be destroyed, and I will pay 10,000 talents of silver to the hands of those that have charge of the business, to bring it unto the king's treasuries. So he was requesting of the king for the silver, 10,000 talents of silver, in order to pay those who were going to bring about that, take charge of that business. And the king took his ring from his hand and gave it unto Haman the son of Medatha, the Agagite, the Jews' enemy. And the king said to Haman, the silver is given to thee, the people also, to do with them as it seems good to thee. Then there were the king's scribes called on the 13th day of the first month. And there was written according to all that Haman had commanded unto the king's lieutenants and to the governors that were over every province, and to the rulers of every people of every province according to the writing thereof, and to every people after their language. In the name of King Ahasuerus was it written and sealed with the king's ring. And the letters were sent by post into all the king's provinces to destroy, to kill, and to cause to perish all Jews, both young and old, little children and women, in one day, even upon the 13th day of the 12th month, which is the month Adar, and to take spoil of them for a prey. Now here we have again, and to take spoil of them for a prey. And when the reversal happened, the Jews laid not their hands on the spoil, and that's an important aspect of that, because this was an evil plot, okay? And knowing that, I think they would have recognized that this was not God's will to do that. This is verse 15. The post went out, being hastened by the king's commandment, and the decree was given in Shushan the palace, and the king and Haman sat down to drink. But the city Shushan was perplexed. Now I wanted to do a couple word studies in this study. And the first one is they were perplexed. This Hebrew word is used only twice in the Old Testament. Now it's found here in Esther, and then the second time in Joel 1. After the barking of the fig tree, and then God mentions the cattle or oxen of the field are perplexed. Now this is the time when the meat offering and the drink offering is withheld from the house of God. The meat and drink offering represents the work of Christ for sin payment. This perplexing is speaking about the historic account with Israel, but also the desolation of the houses of God by the abomination which makes desolate near the end. Now here it is in Joel 1:13. Gird yourselves and lament, ye priests, howl, ye ministers of the altar, come, lie all night in sackcloth, ye ministers of my God, for the meat offering and the drink offering is withholden from the house of your God. Now he prescribes a fasting and a calling on God, and this is precisely what Esther did. She fasted and she prayed. Sanctify ye a fast, call a solemn assembly, gather the elders and all the inhabitants of the land into the house of the Lord your God, and cry unto the Lord. Alas, for the day of the Lord is at hand, and as a destruction from the Almighty shall it come. Is not the meat cut off before our eyes? Yea, joy and gladness from the house of our God. Verse 17. The seed is rotten under their clods. The gardeners are laid desolate. The barns are broken down, for the corn is withered. How do the beasts groan? The herds of cattle are perplexed, because they have no pasture. Yea, the flocks of sheep are made desolate. Now, looking up that word cattle, I came across the language that's mentioned in Job. And this is fairly interesting because Job's oxen / cattle were destroyed by Satan during his request of God to harm Job, not to kill him or anything, but to basically test him. And that was his patience. Job's patience during that time was a picture of the captivity of tribulation. Job's oxen destroyed by Satan's desire to attack Job. This was accomplished by the Sabians and the Chaldeans. Let's see. Now, in the book of Job, cattle or oxen were used to plow the field for plowing and planting of seed. We see this with the language of the yoke of the oxen and other thing. That is the word cattle. Now, Job had originally, from the start point of the attack, 500 yoke of oxen, and at the end he had double that. He had 1,000 because God blessed him double on everything. And that's a grand picture, I believe, of the period of time after the tribulation is God's blessing goes forth. Let's see, what is God teaching with all this language? In Joel, as the cattle were perplexed, God is using this to pinpoint the time of desolation brought on by Satan near the end. That is because Satan attacked Job. That is not the end of the story, because we read further in Joel 2 that God reverses things and then God does great things. Okay, that's the key here. When we were talking about originally in Joel 1, how the fig tree is barked and so on. In Joel 2, there's a reversal where God is magnified and he does great things after the time of the northerns removed. Let's see. This is Job 42:12. So the Lord blessed the latter end of Job more than his beginning, for he had 14,000 sheep, 6,000 camels, 1,000 yoke of oxen, and 1,000 she-asses. In Joel 1, God is using the same word perplexed to show how the activity of evil, whether it be by Haman or Satan, now they were both termed destroyers, caused this perplexity. No plowing when this desolation takes place until God reverses things and he performs great things or is magnified. I mentioned also before that there's a cry to fast and pray in Joel 1, and this is exactly what Esther did. Now, the certain decree was essential. I'm sorry, the certain decree was essentially an act of revenge on the part of Haman against Mordecai. Haman regarded Mordecai as one of his enemies who would not bow down to him, and that the king actually granted that to Haman, but by the laws that Mordecai followed were the laws of God, where you only worship God. And the same picture is seen in the book of Daniel, where Daniel and his 3 Hebrew companions did not bow down and worship the statue which Nebuchadnezzar had erected. Let's see. When Haman was named prime minister, the king had issued a general order that all were to bow down to him. However, Mordecai constantly refused to do so by the laws of his faith, and after Haman found out that Mordecai was Jewish, he designed a plot to have all Jews in the Persian kingdom killed. Haman obtained the king's consent for the general massacre to take place in one day of all the Jews. Now, obviously the Jews were distressed by this first decree that went forth. And Mordecai turned to Esther for help. And Esther then planned to appeal to the king on behalf of the Jews. But this would require that she reveal to her husband, the king, that she too was Jewish. In doing so, she placed her life at risk, and Esther's appeal to the king involved her requesting that he attend a banquet in her quarters, that he be accompanied by Haman. Now, before she did this, though, she waited 3 days and spent time in fasting and prayer. So that's very similar to what we just read. The cry in Joel 1 to fast and pray, due to this decree that went forth, and due to the desolation that is seen in Joel 1. Now, let's get into the details of Purim being 473 BC. Esther 8:12. Upon one day in all the provinces of King Ahasuerus, namely upon the 13th day of the 12th month, which is the month Adar, the copy of the writing for a commandment to be given in every province was published unto all people, that the Jews would be ready against that day to avenge themselves on their enemies. So the posts that rode upon mules and camels went out, being hastened and pressed on by the king's commandment. And the decree was given at Shushan the palace. Now this is Esther 9:1. Now in the 12th month, that is the month Adar, on the 13th day of the same, when the king's commandment and his decree drew near to be put in execution, in that day that the enemies of the Jews hoped to have power over them, though it was turned to the contrary, that the Jews had rule over them that hated them. Now the date on this would be, and I've checked this out, 473 BC. There's one site, Biblesearchers.com, has quoted that. There's another site that mentioned 473, and I think that date's accurate because when I ran the numbers, it really did appear to be accurate as far as the factors that break down. Biblesearchers.com suggested that it would be March 6th, 473 BC, and we're looking this year also for Purim to fall in the month of March. Now let's see. Let's look at some of these numbers. 473 BC to the year 2012, this year, is 2,485 years. Then we subtract that 1 year since there is no year zero, and we arrive at 2,484 years. And that shows a very interesting number, the number 23. Also the number 276. We'll talk about that a little bit. 2,484 years is 2 times 2 times 3 times 3 times 3 times 23. God highlighted the number 23 as a time of judgment. It's seen in the 2300 evenings and mornings of Daniel, where the abomination takes place. 23,000 died in the wilderness in one day. What else? The 4,600 that went into captivity, that's 2 times 2,300. Always seen as a number of judgment. And this casting of lots for that day was, it's seen as a judgment, because not only was it not enacted, but it was reversed. So that judgment fell upon those who plotted this plot. What's interesting about that number, 2,484 years, you can look at it also as another way besides the 2 times 2 times 3 times 3 times 3 times 23, and that would be 9 times 276. I'm starting to see some really interesting things going on here. We mentioned 140 the other day being 2 times 70, and now we have the number, a very biblical number, 276, showing up in the 2,484 years. The 276 involved the Paul and the other men on the ship during that great storm, in which even though their ship was broken up, they even rode onto, got safely to shore onto the some of the boards and planks of the ship. So 276 men going through a storm, and we have this period of time ending in 2012, where it shows 9 times 276. The number 276 is again showing the number 23, just like the 2,484 years is. 276 is 2 times 2 times 3 times 23. So let's look at some other numbers that the book of Esther shows from Purim to this year, 2012. Let's see, Esther 9:4. For Mordecai was great in the king's house, and his fame went throughout all the provinces. For this man Mordecai waxed greater and greater. Thus the Jews smote all of their enemies with the stroke of the sword, and slaughter and destruction, and did what they would unto those that hated them. And in Shushan the palace the Jews slew and destroyed 500 men. Now it's mentioned too that the 10 sons of Haman were slaughtered, destroyed. 500 men plus Haman's 10 sons is 510. I'm just going to break these numbers down of the reversal that happened individually, then I'll add them all together. 510 is 2 times 3 times 5 times 17. 3 is, usually God's purpose. 2 is representing the believers. 5, it can represent judgment or salvation. And 17 is salvation. So this reversal that is seen does show salvation there. Esther 9:15. For the Jews that were in Shushan gathered themselves together on the 14th day also of the month Adar, and slew 300 men at Shushan, but on the prey they laid not their hand. Remember that term, on the prey they laid not their hand, is the complete opposite of what Haman wanted to do, because they honored God's word. 300 more, that's 2 times 2 times 3 times 5 times 5, or 2 times 150. We have a doubling of 150 there. And this is Esther 9:16. But the other Jews that were in the king's provinces gathered themselves together and stood for their lives, and had rest from their enemies, and slew of their foes 75,000. But they laid not their hands on the spoil, on the prey. On the 13th day of the month of Adar, and on the 14th day of the same, rested they, and made it a day of feasting and gladness. So we've covered, let's see, the 510, which was 2 times 3 times 5 times 17. That would be the 500 men plus Haman's 10 sons, 300 more, 2 times 2 times 3 times 5 times 5, or 2 times 150. And then we have the 75,000. Now that breaks down to 2 times 2 times 2 times 3 times 5 times 5 times 5 times 5 times 5. So we have a total 500, 10 sons of Haman, 300, 75,000 75,000. And that breaks down to 75810. That's 75,810. Those factors show that big number. The factors are 2 times 3 times 5 times 7 times 19 times 19. I guess now, if you would have to include Haman including into this, so that would be 75,811, and that would be 47 times 1,613. I've seen 47 shown up, and last night I was looking for it, and this morning I was looking for it. I wrote it down somewhere, and I wish I would have just filed that better, because I can't seem to find 47, but I'm going to still look for that. But the let's see, the number 19, which was included into the 75,810 that were destroyed as God reversed things. I wrote this in the book Countdown. The number 19, this is on page 59. The number 19 has appeared a few times in my studies of the Bible. It has also shown up as a factor of larger numbers. 38 is 2 times 19. 133 is 7 times 19. Korah lived 133 years, Exodus 6:18, and his sons bore the burden of the sanctuary, Numbers 7:9. The number 38, 2 times 19, seems related to all three words: sin, judgment, and salvation, healing. Slash healing, that's why I said 3. In John 5:5, Christ healed a man with an infirmity which he had for 38 years. Jesus, after making the man whole, said something very important: sin no more, lest the worst thing come upon thee. And this is John 5:14. Afterward Jesus findeth him in the temple, and said unto him, Behold, thou art made whole. Sin no more, lest the worst thing come unto thee. Therefore, the number 19 can show healing, salvation, warning of a greater judgment as the result of continued sin, and also somehow possibly related to the sanctuary, the sons of Kohath. I might have said Korah earlier. It's Kohath. I have seen this number appear as a factor in connection with the great earthquakes and volcano dates to the year 2011 AD. See the chart entitled The Coming Great Earthquake. So that's number 19, and here it shows up again in this larger number of those who were overtaken by the Jewish people. Let's see. They laid not their hands on their spoil or prey. This is interesting language, because the book of Daniel, in the book of Daniel, taking the prey or spoil is related to the activity of Satan, who by taking the kingdom, this is fascinating, he issues the plunder, loot, and material to issue to those fallen by his scattering of riches. This is Daniel 11. And this really helps to look at the ISA, the interlinear on this, and read the language as it's written there. Daniel 11:24. And because this, sometimes in the King James, I mean, the way they worded things, you just have to really break down the language and look at it in the ISA to see what it was really talking about. He shall enter peaceably even unto the fattest places of the province, and he shall do that which his fathers have not done, nor his fathers' fathers. He shall scatter among them the prey, the spoil, and riches. Yea, and he shall forecast his devices against the strongholds, even for a time. Now, in other words, to take the prey, they would be guilty of sharing in the evil of this in the book of Esther. The stroke of the sword, slaughter, and destruction. Now, this is Esther 9:5. Thus the Jews smote all their enemies with the stroke of the sword, and the slaughter, and destruction, and did what they would unto those that hated them. Now, I wanted to focus on the word destruction. Since the contrary was done to the enemies of the Jews, then those who had this great hatred against the Jews wanted their destruction, and that's evil. The Hebrew word is Hebrew 12 or H12, and it's pronounced Abdon, and it's from Hebrew 6, a perishing or a destruction. Now this is very related to the word H11, Abaddon. Abstractly a perishing, concretely Hades or a destruction. We see this word Abaddon mentioned in Revelation 9. Now remember that Haman wanted the Jews' destruction. That's his name is very related to destruction. The evil angels, locusts with the stings of scorpions. This is Revelation 9. And they had a king over them, which is the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name in the Hebrew tongue is Abaddon, and in the Greek tongue had this name Apollyon. One woe is past, and behold, there come two more woes hereafter. Now God brings his judgment in Revelation 9, the fallen houses of worship. However, those who seek the destruction of the believers, as related to the Jews back in the book of Esther, God is a jealous God for his people. And this reversal that is seen in Esther, I really believe relates to God's kingdom, his dominion going to the end and not Satan's, this great reversal that happens. Let's see, I want to just finish this study with reading Esther 9. And then I'm going to read a proverb, because I really, I love this. The Proverbs are, when I study God's Word, if I come to something, a word study, and I can't figure it out, I can almost always find something related to that word that I'm studying in either the book of Psalms or the book of Proverbs. And, Proverbs is all about giving understanding and wisdom. It's very great information in the book of Proverbs, but also Psalms. I found myself not only relating to David, and sometimes when I read what he wrote under God's Spirit, that I so much relate to his words and what he said. But when I'm doing word studies, I find answers in the book of Psalms. That's one of the first things I scroll down to when I study. I look at the book of Psalms, and I look at the book of Proverbs to see if there's any word relationship going on there and any further information given in God's Word. Esther 9:16. But the other Jews that were in the king's province gathered themselves together and stood for their lives, and had rest from their enemies, and slew of their foes 75,000, but laid not their hands on their prey. On the 13th day of the month of Adar, and on the 14th day the same rested they, and made it a day of feasting and gladness. But the Jews that were at Shushan assembled themselves together on the 13th day thereof, and on the 14th day thereof, and on the 15th day of the same they rested, and made it a day of feasting and gladness. This is verse 19. Therefore the Jews of the villages that dwelt in unwalled towns made the 14th day of the month Adar a day of gladness and feasting, and a good day, and of sending portions one to another. Now we covered sending portions one to another and the good day in a previous study. And I really do believe that, a lot of this relates to God's Word at the end, and how that, sending portions relates so much to the gospel going forth at the end. Okay, this is where we're going to close with Proverbs 24. Let's see, Proverbs 24:17. Rejoice not when thy enemy falleth, and let not thy heart be glad when he stumbleth, lest the Lord see it, and it displease him, and he turn away his wrath from him. This is Proverbs 24:19. Fret not thyself because of evil men, neither be thou envious at the wicked. For there shall be no reward to the evil man. The candle of the wicked shall be put out. I think what I'm going to do is actually, close a lot of these studies with some of the Proverbs and Psalms, because I'm finding, a very good relationship to what's going on today. And, God commands here, rejoice not when thine enemy falleth. and let not thine heart be glad when he stumbleth, lest the Lord see it, and it displease him, and he turn away his wrath from him. So I wanted to do that on some of these studies, just to finish with a proverb or a psalm, one of the two. And today's the first day of that. This is the conclusion so far of the Purim 2012. I'm going to continue to look at it as we go along. You know, we've got, this is January, so we've got like February and into the month of March. Purim 2012 could be very important and significant if God is going to perform a great reversal at that time. So I'll continue to study that and post anything else regarding this. Now this is 4. If there's a 5, I'll number it 5, or 6, whatever, however many it takes. I think these numbers, though, are really fascinating to see the number 23 show up in the 2,484 years since the original Purim in that year, 473 BC, to the year 2012. So anyway, God bless you all. My name is Marty Catuzzo, and you can email me at 2011studies@gmail.com. And the rest of the day, I'm going to record some music. I've been wanting to record some songs. I've been looking at some old hymns. You know, I'm talking 1800s. And some of those songs were really good. Some of them were recorded by well-known people, Willie Nelson, Johnny Cash, the Carter family. Some of them were really just solid songs that have withstood the test of time. And I think it's because they focus on the great promises of the new heavens and new earth, the coming of Christ, that great faith and promise of all that. And you know, people who God has drawn and saved by His Spirit, they look forward to that day. We look forward to that day. So it's like to resurrect some of these songs and bring them back to life after maybe years of sitting dormant. Well, not really dormant, because they've been sung in hymns in churches and all, but I just think that believers today would benefit from hearing some of these songs. I've also wanted to do some of David's, rewrite songs on some of the David's psalms. And one of the things is, we're so used to a certain way of writing a song and listening to a song, how everything has to rhyme. The end phrase has to rhyme with the next phrase, so on, A, B, whatever type of song pattern that you choose to write in. But you know, a lot of those psalms did not rhyme, but they were psalms. So totally different structure. So it's harder to do, but I might try one or two and see how it comes out. But that's what I'm going to be doing, you know, later. And I really look forward to recording music, because it's so much fun, and actually presenting it so other people can enjoy it also. So this is, for now, the last study of Purim 2012, and I'll try to get back into the flood study, the 377 days. Been trying to do these as quick as possible, so be patient. Thank you, and God bless you all. Thanks.